Finish the configuration of our service profile template right now, and I will show you how it gets applied to the server, how the GNU OS is doing its magic, and how things are configured before we start booting. So I configured some management NICs. I actually created one more here, so I created a management vNIC here, and because I created an extra management vNIC, I now want this vNIC to be one of the first of the system to become active. So let me drag, oh, I cannot. Right. So I need to manually place these vNICs into these different vCon groups. So let's first start with the VHBAs. I want them to have in vCon 1, and for the vNICs, I'm going to say I first assign vNIC management, vNIC A1 and vNIC B1, and in vCon 2 I assign A2 and B2, just like we had on our previous configuration. So this is going to be our order in which we see things now. So let's go next. Next, how do I boot my server? This is going to be a very important server. So I might have a standard configuration already ready for this, which I assume is actually pretty good, but let's create one. So create a specific boot policy. Now, like I said, these names are very important. So if I add networking to my boot policy like that, so it's a drag and drop interface, this is going to be Pixie Boot. I'm not going to do Pixie Boot right now, I'm going to do SAN boot. Maybe I want to add a CD-ROM drive. If I'm using virtual media from my KVM over IP session, I need to use that CD-ROM drive as the first bootable item here. And then I specify, alright, Fiber Channel is going to be my next boot target. Now, because I already know how my Fiber Channel targets are going to be called, I don't really care about the names here. Why not? Why would I care about them if I configure a separate boot policy? So if I configure a specific boot policy via this wizard here, so if I would create a separate boot policy, if I would do that and I would go into my VHBAs, of course I do not know what my VHBA name is. So I get this window telling me what's the VHBA name. I only know that VHBA name when I'm configuring the service profile template. And this is where your VHBA number really comes into play, and I really need to make sure that it matches with how I configure the actual VHBA in the service profile template. So I need to specify then, this is going to be FC0 and FC1. Now, this is something you know. This is something that if you're in the lab again, this is something you know because you configure this yourself. What you will not know is the WWPN of the target that you need to use. I need to specify which LUN and which WWPN I need to use. This will be given to you. And what's very important there is that you will be given a WWPN to boot from in some sort of a table where they specify, because they use the same lab instructions for each of the racks, but they use different storage arrays for each of the racks, of course. So each storage array has its own WWPN because it's a different hardware box. So in our case, I'm going to cancel this out because I already have a pre-configured boot policy called SAN. And as you can see in this SAN policy, I have two VHBAs, so VHBA-A and VHBA-B, that I actually need to rename now. So VHBA-A and VHBA-B, and they use a specific boot target. So I need to go back to my VHBA configuration and configure these names properly because I configured different ones. use a template, template B. Assign them to the correct placement policy, and now the boot policy says VHBA and VHBAB, all looking good. Now the next question I get when configuring my service profile template, which maintenance policy do I want to have? And of course I want to use my user acknowledgement maintenance policy here. So that's a very important thing. Server assignment, usually I'm going to say assign them later. Currently I don't care a lot about the server, so assign it later. I don't care about the assignment right now. Depending on the task in your lab, of course, so they might tell you already configure a server pool and stuff and connect that in the template. Most of the times they will tell you connect it later, so finish your configuration now and then go back and finish everything. This is a very important radio button. So this admin up and down statement, that's a very important thing. Why? If I have an updating template and I say the power state of my server is down, it means that every time I change the configuration in this template and it gets applied to the server, in the resulting window, so let's say if I change something later on and the changes are pushed, the whole template is pushed. So let's say I change a BIOS policy, I reboot the server, run the GNU OS, and then I leave the server powered off. Because the initial power state is down, so either way, the initial power state is down, so it's going to be power state down. So after the change of configuration, if I reapply that service profile template, it means that my server is going to stay down. So always keep this up. Set this to up. Now here in the server assignment part, I can specify which firmware packages that I want. So here I can specify what is the host firmware package that I want on here. So let's use a pre-configured one. Next. Final step is what are the all the other policies that I want to use. For example, BIOS policies. Or do I want to set a management IP address on the service profile? So do I want to set this is where I set the IP address on the service profile versus setting it on the blade. So I showed you today how you set it on the blade. And with this setting, I can set it on the service profile. If I leave this to none, it's okay, because I'm going to use the IP address of the blade now. But now, because I assigned an IP address towards the blade on the service profile, I'm going to use that IP address when connecting to it when I apply the service profile. So next, power controls, scrub policies, all things that I haven't had a room for. Now I can set the scrub or no scrub policy. And that's it. That is my service profile template. Set of settings. And now I can start reapplying that. All right, I made a mistake. I created a All right, that's good. So I accidentally created a server's profile instead of a template. But fortunately, there is a feature that you can upgrade the profile to a template. So that makes life a lot easier. So I now have my server's profile template here that I can now use to assign servers to. So I have one unassigned server, which is server 3, in my case, which is a full width blade. So now I can start applying that. I can do that in two different ways. So as we discussed, we can assign it through server pools, or we can statically assign a certain server. That's what I'm going to do now. So after configuring the template, what we will do is we will say right click. So let's check the settings of this server's profile template. If we go to storage settings, we see exactly our VHBAs. We see exactly our networking configuration and exactly in which order things will be placed in the placement policy. So here you can see that the VNIC management and the VNIC A1 and VNIC B1 will be placed on vCon group 1. And the other two are going to be placed in vCon group 2. So the desired order is how we actually are going to plug them in on the PCI bus. So here you can see that vCon group 2 is going to be placed earlier than vCon group 1. So we do not have a lot of control over this. So this means that VNIC A2 will be our VMNIC 0 in VMware. But we will see that when the actual placement has happened. So again, if we start looking at the MAC addresses, for example, because this is a template, I don't know the MAC address yet. I really need to instate a server's profile. I need to associate it to a server before I drag MAC addresses out of the pool. So it's going to show up as derived. Boot order, I'm using a boot policy that's using fiber channel boot. So send primary, send secondary. I know which WWPN I'm using, so therefore I do not need to worry about that. Let me look up the IP addresses of the Nexus switches that we have in this rack. That's it. All right, so here we see that we have our storage array, which is this one, this NetApp array. This is going to be our target. So this is where we're going to boot ESX from. And we can see that one of the aliases is not online. So this is our server which is not online yet. So zoning is also already in place. So next week I'm going to focus more on the booting of the server, both from Fibre Channel and iSCSI. But as you can see, I have some zoning available. So my access list is already configured, meaning I can access that 810060. That's my NetApp array. And I'm waiting for my VHBA to come online. It's currently offline because there's no FCID known. As soon as I boot it, it will come available. So let's do that. So to now assign a service profile from this, I can say here, create a service profile from my template. So I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to say, what prefix do I want to give this? So this is going to be my DC class. That's going to be my prefix. How do I want to start numbering? And how much of these service profiles can I create? I only need one service profile because I only have one server. So in this case, I'm going to create just one service profile out of this template. As soon as I do that, the system created a new service profile called DC class 1. So as you can see, it automatically appended that number 1 behind the prefix. And as you can see, because we created an updating service profile template, it's warning me, hey, you're still connected to a template. If you want to change something regarding the network, configure a connectivity policy, adding or changing vNICs, everything is grayed out. The boot order, I cannot modify the boot policy. And everything is created. So everything is propagated through the SP template. So no changes here. Currently, there is no server associated to it. Creating a clone is the other option to use the same setting for multiple service profiles. So there are two ways of reusing the same settings over and over again. So first of all, which is the best option, I can create a service profile template, which we did over here. Instead of only creating a service profile template, I can also copy service profiles. So these service profiles that have that one-to-one mapping from profile to server, and again, I assign MAC addresses to the actual service profile, so everything is already assigned to this guy. So MAC addresses and stuff, everything is taken out of the pool. So if I take a look now in the MAC address pool, let's see for DC1, I have a lot of MAC addresses here. Here we go. So this is one. I hope you can see it. It is a little small. It says it is assigned to the DC class 1 service profile. So as soon as I create the service profile, I take resources out of the pools and I assign them to the service profile. So I'm now not using the derived overview, so as you saw earlier. But if I go back to my networking configuration here, now I will see actual MAC addresses configured. So now I went to the pool and took those settings out. I took those settings out of the pool and assigned them to my service profile. So this is how I distribute information to multiple service profiles using templates. The other option is to copy and paste. Meaning, if I right click on my service profile, I have an option called create a clone. If I create a clone and I give this a name, I say this is going to be DC class 2. And I create a clone. What it will do is it will make an exact copy of the service profile, but it will reuse and re-go into the pools associations and take off new settings. So take new resources in. So what I can do is if I have 8 servers, I can make one service profile and clone that 7 times for all the others. So that's one option, but it's not a very flexible option, right? It's just copying and pasting, basically. So that is the cloning. But what I can do is I can edit it right now. So I can make a copy of that service profile. Again, it is unassociated, so there's no server connected to this service profile. As you can see, the associated server line is empty. But what I can do now is I can say, all right, I created a service profile template. It is an updating template, so I cannot update this one. but I still want to make some changes to another service profile. So I create a clone, a copy. That clone is also bound to the template, so it is associated with the template. But I have an option to unbind it. If I click the unbind keyword here, yes. Do I want to unbind it? Yes, I want to unbind it from the template. Now, this service profile, this particular service profile, so DC class 1 is still associated, but the DC class 2 service profile is now free again. So now I can go into the networking configuration and maybe even add some VNICs and do all the things that I want to. So now I can start adding and removing configuration from my service profile. So here you can see that as soon as I change some things here and I unbind it from the template, now I can start changing things. So let's say I delete 3 of these VNICs on DC class 2. I save the changes, all good. So there's no server connected, so I can freely do this without impacting anything. And I create VNIC rig, and I say use a template. Save the changes, all right. So a new MAC address is associated, so now I have a totally different configuration than we are using in our service profile template. Now, as I said, you can apply this back again. So I can reapply or reinstate that binding to the template with a single click. So if I go back to my General tab, I can say bind to a template here. If I'm going to bind it back to my service profile template that I earlier created, I can bind it to a service profile template and say, turn it back to the SP template. Successfully bound. What did this do? It reinstated those changes that I undid and configured all the other things back again. So everything you change is okay when you unbind it, but when you rebind it, I get my original changes again. The reason why you would want to bind an SP template back again, so usually you will have initial service profile templates and updating VNIC templates. So initial service profile templates are not bound, so they are just unbound. When do I want to bind them back again? Because usually I will not change anything locally here. That's not a very good thing to do. But what I do change from time to time is my firmware policies. When I want to do a software upgrade, I'm probably going to build a new firmware package. And that firmware package, I want to reapply that to all my servers. All right, so that is my clone. I can only create one clone. If I have a service profile template, I can create multiple clones, let's say, in the same time. So if I say create service profiles, I can say I want 200 service profiles. And that will create a huge list of service profiles now, of course. I'm not going to do that. So my clone, I can delete my clone right now because I don't need it anymore. All right, so let's bind this service profile to a server. I'm not going to use pools. I'm just going to manually assign a server. That association is done in the change service profile association. And now I can say, how do I want to do it? Do I want to pre-provision a server and just specify a slot? Do I want to select a server or do I want to use a pool? In this case, I want to use an existing server, and it says, hey, in chassis 1, slot number 3 is a server that has no association until now. Or do you want to override something else? But it will show you a list of available servers, and that meaning these servers do not have a service profile attached to them yet. So I want to use server 3. And that's going to warn you, hey, your changes are going to require a reboot of the blade. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I'm sure. Now, because this is a new association, it's not going to do that pending activities check here. So for now, it's just going to start that association. And now we can monitor that. We can monitor the association in two ways. So it says a status is configuration here, but I can also manage that through the called FSM tab. In the FSM tab, I can see the status of my service profile association. So currently it's at 35%, and I will get all kinds of messaging here what it is doing. So it's updating firmware, or it is powering it on, powering it off again, or associating things. So here are all the pending and progress. So currently it's doing booting the GNU OS. And of course the second way we can see that is by setting up a KVM session, which is my preferred way of watching it. So if I click on KVM console, it will set up a KVM over IP session towards this specific blade. And here we are. So we're now testing and configuring memory. This takes a while. Why? We have a whole bunch of memory in this server. So this is taking some time. That is also the downside of the whole UCS system. in your lab, when you step into the lab, this takes a while as well. So be ready to wait for at least 10 minutes for your service profile association, 10 to 15 minutes usually. So again, get a coffee, get a water when you're doing this, because this takes time. So know for sure that you have enough time to do your service profile association, because you lose valuable time in the lab for this. So I think because the settings didn't change a lot, it should go very well. So we have about 98 gigs of memory in here, so it checked that very fast actually. Let's check our CLI of our Nexus. Do we already see? No. So I see 2 ESX servers. I'm waiting for the third one, but that will take a while. Ah, there we go. Now we're booting the GNU OS image. As you can see here, it's called PNUOS image. So it's gonna boot some Linux stuff, and now it's gonna go into that GNU OS and configure stuff. And of course, you cannot follow what's happening here. I never know what this thing is doing. So it's just running a lot of scripts. Currently, it's still booting, I guess. Let's check the FSM, what it's doing. GNU OS identification. It's going to catalog the value, the software version. It's going to test some things, do image updates, software updates, all kinds of stuff. Ah, there we go. Now we do not need a software upgrade, so we can skip that. So this is a very successful way of how you can do this. If you're doing this, again, you do not see a lot of things. You still see things are being configured, but yeah, we do not see exactly what this thing is doing. So it's currently doing something with the video, I guess, or with the CIMC. So what is it doing here? Ah, booting the host. It's already finished, so it did that pretty fast actually. So that was the whole GNU OS. So you saw the GNU OS doing all kinds of things, and through the FSM, you can verify what it's doing. So through that FSM tab in the service profile, you can see exactly what is going on. So very useful tool in your verification of your UCS configuration. Now we just need to wait. So the configuration has been applied. Now we need to wait for the server to actually boot. And then we can see if it will boot from Fibre Channel. So in this configuration, we are not using local disks. I'm using any configuration, so I'm not using the local disks. I will be using Fiber Channel boot because that is my first boot order. If I check my boot order, all I see is a Fiber Channel boot target. I do not see a local disk boot target. So I will always boot from Fiber Channel or from CD-ROM. Well, there is no CD-ROM installed. You can believe me about that. But you will see that there is a Fiber Channel disk available for doing that. So just needed to wait before the memory has checked everything again, and then we will see that it will start logging into the Fiber Channel network and doing things. So let's check the Fiber Channel network real quick. No, I should see PDC ESX01 coming online, but I'm not seeing that yet. So we need to wait until the boot has been completed. Patience. There we go. So now we see the Fiber Channel boot driver. And if everything goes okay, we should see a disk here where it will start booting from. If the login happens successfully, we should see a disk here. But what I should hope is that it shows the right WWPN. And probably it didn't do that. Yeah, so we do see an extra floggy now, it's this one. But that floggy is not recognized as the correct device alias. So what happened here is in my zoning configuration, that third zone that should have had the correct server in it, it is not coming online. And that is caused because now the pool allocation is different. So I'm using a different WWPN now that I'm supposed to. So what I will do is I will change the network to support this new configuration. So what I will do is I will go in, and this is the new WWPN because you saw that coming in. If I compare it to the previous list, here you can see it's not, and here you can see it now logged into that fabric. So I'm going to change the device alias database. And I'm going to say it's PDC ESX01 VHBAA. There we go. So now it failed booting, but now if I reset the server, so just power cycle it actually, it should reboot, and now I should be able to start. So like you saw here, the host is logged into the network, so not now anymore, but now the zoning is in place. And because that zoning is in place right now, I can access my storage and I can access my Fiber Channel boot target. So now it's not logged in. So we need to wait for the boot again. Which again takes a minute or two. In restart state. So be patient with the UCS, that's the message. There we go. And again, we're going to go test some memory. The problem is you cannot do the Control-Alt-Delete method by choosing a new one, because the Fiber Channel boot driver is only initialized when the system is actually booting. So when it did not properly initialize, it will show as an error. It will error out, and it will say, all right, I was not able to boot successfully from Fiber Channel. You might even see that in the logging, by the way. No, cannot. Should see my beautiful Cisco logo again. We can still not boot correctly. Why is that? BEEB41. Ah, right. I have a little bit of an issue here. The storage array expects a certain WWPN from me. So it's not a zoning issue why I cannot boot, it's a NetApp issue why I cannot boot. The NetApp is expecting a specific WWPN to log into it. And currently I'm using a different one. So I will not go ahead and change everything, but you see that I have a storage array logged in here. My zoning entry works as well. So currently it's a storage